Mina Malik Hussain, and this is the Coffee Table. And as always, we have a wonderful show lined up for you today, but I feel particularly excited about this one because we are talking to three people who, out of the four, who run one of Pakistan's, well, not even one of the, I would say, the premier literary journal coming out of this country these days. And, you know, it is none other than, drumroll, the Aleph Review. This is their 5th volume, so it's their 5th anniversary, and this wonderful book is marking a really significant point in the journey of the Aleph Review, and they've spent the last 5 years highlighting and celebrating art and literature from Pakistan and abroad also, of course, because that's a conversation that keeps happening across the world and the conversation that Pakistani creatives have with a global audience. But, you know, obviously more of that later, because this is only an introduction. So I'm delighted to be welcoming with me on set today Mehwish Amin, who is the publisher at Broken Leg Publications. She's the editor-in-chief of the Aleph Review and is a Pushcart-nominated poet who writes in English. And also joining us on set is Hassan Tahir Latif, who is the managing editor at the Aleph Review. He is the co-founder of the educational consultancy Concilium and is also the assistant editor at Good Times, where he is a cultural writer. Lots of editors. And joining us over the internet from Zoom is Ilona Yusuf, who is the associate editor at the Aleph Review. She's an English language poet with a book out called Picture This. She also runs a design studio called Atelier Ilona and makes the most beautiful lamps you ever saw. And I only have like a million, so you know what I'm talking about. Welcome to the show, friend.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
I know, I'm so excited. Like, illustrious editorial company I'm keeping. But first of all, congratulations on 5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done.
Yeah, it's been quite, I mean, you know, it's rolled by so fast that, I mean, when we were celebrating this year, we just thought, but it was just a little while ago we were having the first launch.
That's true.
And it's just so much work, but it just gone by.
It really, and you know, I feel like particularly like Aleph has always been very close to my heart because, you know, in a very small way, I was there at the beginning, and I remember that it is you and I and Athar Tahir Sahab sitting in a little room and sort of talking about this idea of yours, and you were like, we need to have
a journal,
and it needs to talk about art, and it needs to talk about poetry, and we need to sort of put something together that is intelligent and beautiful to look at, and you know, and there you go. So tell me a little bit about this journey with Aleph.
So that was the initial point. And Athar Tahir, who's a well-known poet, he was running ICPWE, which is the International Center for Pakistani Writing in English. And he was doing it from Kinnaird College. And he just asked me to come and volunteer there to see all the stuff that he had collected for archiving and to, you know, to help me, to help him put it away or archive it. So I was there, and as you know, I mean, and at one point I said, I mean, what better way to archive material than to also put it in a journal?
Absolutely.
So then we decided, I know there was you, there was Momna Mela, there was Hira Naguib, there was Ilona always from the beginning. Not yet Hassan, but
he was the surprise for later.
The only male was in fact Athar Tahir, you know, and you know, we were a very female kind of lot. And then we started off with this thing of starting a journal under the aegis of perhaps the ICPWE. But then what happened was kind of things happened and fate intervened and whatever. He got very involved with doing a conference for ICPWE.
And if I may interrupt at this point, there's also a difference between an archive and a journal or a magazine. And those I feel like are serving two very important but different purposes. And so what's the difference there? Like, what are we doing with a journal or a magazine that an archive doesn't?
So what we are doing is that we are doing a lot of different functions in this journal. So because I went over and talked to Athar and all that, and that whole archiving thing was in my mind, and I saw what a trove of stuff he had.
It's a wonderful collection.
From you know, all the older poets, the authors, etc., and their pictures, and it was all there. It's still all there. So I did want to archive some of that, and we always have an archive section, and in which we, like, for example, we've done the poet Makki Qureshi, who was a wonderful poet, and she wrote in the 70s or so, and then we have my first volume was dedicated to Tawfiq Rafat, who was a mentor, and Kaleem Umar wrote, you know, we dug out. In fact, Athar is the one who gave me his essay, Kaleem Umar's, on Tawfiq, then Tawfiq Rafat. Then Sirat Hazar, his son, came up and said that I have this unpublished piece by my father. I said, Walk it over.
These are things that we read about in like the New York Times or, you know, sort of magazines or literary papers like that, where it's like, oh, you know, we found a letter or somebody had like an old tin and, you know, something came out of it. And then everyone is like, wow. And I think we're so used to seeing this happen in literary landscapes that are not our own, that it's just so wonderful to hear about that sort of thing happening here, because, you know, I feel like our literary scene, it's been small, and I think that's just because we are a small country, and English writing is another subset of writing. But that's a small thing.
Should I say something? I just wanted to. The point I had in mind was that before all the novelists came on the scene, you have to remember that the poets writing in English language were there.
Absolutely.
So they have been writing for a long time, and I don't think enough people know about them, because they were writing at the time when nobody acknowledged them really.
Absolutely.
And they were pushing along, trying to do their little bit and getting. You know, a little bit of attention within a certain niche. And then the novelists came up, and you know, now we are known for our novels and all that. But the poets were there from before, and we should acknowledge that, and that should be part of our literary landscape and our literary archiving.
Absolutely. We've been like holding strong in that corner, and now that we're on the subject of poetry, Ilona, hi, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can.
Excellent. So, Ilona, I know that you look at a lot of the poetry for the Aleph Review with Afshan Shafi, who is also one of the associate editors at the Aleph Review. So, you know, we've been talking about how English language poets have been kind of holding their corner for decades now. But a lot of people I feel like it's changing now, and Aleph has a great deal to do with that. But people haven't been aware of the work that Pakistani poets have been doing over all of this time. And I think that one of the main reasons is a lack of availability, because, you know, their books have gone out of print. There isn't just enough publishing in general. So how do you feel like the response has been to Aleph and the poetry that you guys are publishing?
The thing is that a lot of people who are writing in English actually didn't know, you know, young people writing in English actually didn't know about the people who were in the past, you know, because like the books were out of print, or they weren't taught, or things like that. So what we granted that we knew who Dawood Kamal and Makki Qureshi and Tawfiq Rafat and Kaleem Umar were, a lot of young people actually didn't know until, you know, like... Until, I guess, there was more, the literary festivals talked about them, then Aleph stepped in. Let's not, you know, underestimate ICPWE, because they had the conference, and, you know, so things again started, and even actually FC College, they did a couple of, you know, workshops and then seminars and so on. That had an effect. As far as young people's poetry is concerned, I think there's a lot of really good poetry. It's been there for a long time. It's just no platforms for people. Eventually, then Desi Writers Lounge and the Missing Slate were there, and they were really good. It's sad that they're now inactive, but they were very good for young poets. And then, of course, Aleph came along. So Aleph ka ye tha ki, right from the first issue, you know, there was a lot of, I think we were really surprised by the really good poetry that was there, you know. Now with the fifth issue, I know that, for instance, Afshan, because she's in touch with a lot of young poets, a lot of work came in because of her. even for the last 2-3 issues. But this time, a lot of unsolicited, really, really good work came in. So, that's something to, kind of like celebrate.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm glad that you brought up the part about unsolicited work. And I think, Hassan, that's something that you can tell me more about. Because when the first... Obviously, any new publication, people don't know about it. So one has to sort of go out and look for work and ask for work and solicit work from people. So do you feel like that's what was happening with maybe the first or the second issue, and now you've developed to a point where people send you work and say, please publish it?
For sure. I mean, for this issue, I believe the deadline was the 15th of July last year, and I opened my inbox midnight, as soon as July 16th started, just to check, what's been
very
there.
Because of you.
Because just a couple of days before that, I'd looked at the inbox and I was like, okay, we have a fair amount. And then I opened and there were around 100 unread emails. So a lot of it was poetry, but then most of the prose from this volume, it was unsolicited.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
And we were a bit surprised. I mean, we were pleasantly surprised because it makes our work easier as well. Because you're right. For the last couple of issues, volumes, we were actively going out, as Ilona Auntie just said. Afshan was instrumental in finding younger poets, and I was also in touch with, because of my work in education, I knew some of the younger lot.
And you're reading their writing in different capacities.
And so I would reach out to them, students who were applying for creative writing programs, English literature programs, or others that I just knew. And obviously, the internet really helps. So if you're in touch, Instagram somehow, I think, has become a fantastic place to reach out to people, because everybody's putting up snippets of their writing. So yes, we were doing a lot of soliciting. Obviously, that never meant that we were guaranteeing publication of whatever was solicited, but we had a lot of marketing to do in a way, letting people know that this is who we are, this is why you should send us your work. And initially, I think, our emails for soliciting work used to be a lot longer than they are now, because now we just say, this is who we are, this is our website, this is...
we have arrived.
And for the first issue, in which Hassan wasn't there, he just joined at the end of it, I wish he were. But for the first issue, it was starting a new thing altogether.
Yes.
And it was very kind of difficult to convince a lot of people that, okay, this will amount to something.
Yes.
They had no idea what the production values of the book would be, whether it would be well printed, whether there'd be thousands of errors or not, whether what kind of work they were being.
It's true, because I feel like in that way Aleph is unprecedented, because we do have literary journals, and we do have organizations that put out literary journals, and they exist, but they're nowhere as as slick and sexy as
it is sexy.
It's really sexy. And on this note, we're going to take a very quick break. Stay with us. We'll be back in a flash. Welcome back to the coffee table. I'm in conversation with Hassan Tahir Latif, Mehwish Hamid, and Ilona Yusuf from the Aleph Review, and we're talking about this wonderful publication, which I cannot praise highly enough. And I'm not doing it out of favoritism, but it's legit. So before the break, we were talking about how Aleph is... It sounds really sort of pleb to say, but it looks beautiful. And it's printed on wonderful quality paper. It is as nice as a Paris Review or as a Granta. And I think that counts for something. And I feel like a great deal of that probably has to do with the fact that, Mehwish, there's a lot of art in the journal. So it's as much an art journal almost as it is a literary one.
I will also tell you that having been editor of Libas magazine for about 10 years, they had high production values, also good paper for a magazine, because they projected it for sale in India as well as in London.
And it's a lifestyle publication.
And when I joined it, I really wanted to veer towards literature a bit more and art and stuff like that, which I love. So when I wanted to start this, so we went over to the printers, and with my brother, who's, by the way, I wouldn't be able to do this magazine without him, Jamil Masood, because he is excellent with these little details, and so we sat and we rolled out all the paper was rolled out for us, and there was this paper which was beautiful, and we didn't want that white, shiny, blue-white shine, etc. So we worked on the paper. We worked on, I mean, you know, because if you go to a printer and you sit down with them, and then once you produce the magazine, we have a great layout artist as well, Sana Hassan, and then after that, Jamil works on it. So when you work with the printer, I think they realize that, okay, they are serious about this.
Yeah.
Let's not do anything to displease them. Let's try and get this right. So they get the colors right. They're very good, but they also try especially hard with Alif, because they know that it's, you know, we are concerned with the appearance of the journal as well.
But Hassan, and you know, with Mehwish working with Libas, and you are with Good Times right now, so both of you are very well versed with the importance of aesthetics. So I don't think that it's frivolous to say, and I know that this is a criticism that one does see here and there, internet. We see you, everybody sees you, that the publication is an elite one. And I feel like I want to talk about this because the conversation around creative writing in English is already a slightly fraught one, because people do think it's already an elite activity to begin with. And then you have this magazine that looks the way it does. But I don't see why that should be a problem.
You're right. I mean, we're very open to critique, and if you compare our volumes year after year, we do improve, we take constructive criticism into account and all of that. But just having a surface critique about the way something looks and then calling it elitist because of, I mean, we are an English language journal, right?
Can I also just please add to that, I mean, at least some of the artists that we have covered have come from places in Hazara, in Sindh. When I was sending a copy to one artist, he said there's no address. It was in Karachi, and he says you just have to address it to this PO whatever,
like a PO box,
where I'll come and collect it. So obviously he was not from the elites, right? No. I mean, no, he wasn't. Some of the other artists are not. And as for those who are writing in it in English, your mother-in-law said.
Yes.
And she said it, and she told me once. I asked her, I said, should we feel apologetic about writing in English? And said, never apologize, because if that is what, we are a product of whatever our circumstances are. But if we are happy writing in English, we, you, me, Hassan, X, Y, Z, whatever.
And
that's
you know,
the way it is.
I mean, for us, it's never been that we are gatekeeping literary anthologies in Pakistan.
Very
So if somebody has another idea, if they want to come out with a bilingual publication, if they want to come out with another language or a dialectic journal in a way, you're free to do that, right?
There's so much space.
Exactly, there's so much space, and so that's why. And also the more
Hassan,
important,
we do also have translations.
And I think in terms of the quality, it's very important, because when artists who have already created these works and they send in their work, obviously it's visual. It has to look a certain way.
Absolutely.
If you're going to print something that has a lot of color in it and you choose flimsy paper at the end and their product doesn't come out, they're not going to send in their work to you.
And they've
because it's a disservice to their art, the way that a poem is supposed to look a certain way.
Even for the people who are writing, so it's not just the artists, you know. So if you've written for a publication and the publication looks nice, it's a keepsake.
It's respecting their work.
It's respecting the work of the poets and the writers as well.
And I think Ilona wants to also weigh in on this. Go for it.
I just wanted to add to the thing about writing in English. I mean, we come with all this colonial kind of like burden and everything, but the fact is that there have been other writers in Europe or other places who chose to write in a language which wasn't their own, right? So there is a case in point for that as well. I mean, we don't have to think about this post-colonial stuff all the time. So, excuse me, my cat is...
No, we love all the animals on set. I love it. I think that's our first cat on the show. That's wonderful. Nice. Beautiful. Hi. See.
I'd just like to add to that.
Yes, Hassan.
That it has helped a lot of the more, I would say, serious writers and more established names send in their work. So the fourth volume was, the art was, the main cover was by Shazia Sikandar.
Yes.
And for somebody of her stature to send something to us and trust us with it.
But I want to add a little something to that, because when I was trying to get her from first issue, trust, the very important what you brought up, because she somehow didn't trust a lot of journalists. She wanted to do an interview in Pakistan by a Pakistani journal, but she said that she didn't trust them to present her. Well, I don't know. Maybe there's politics also in the art scene, like there is in everything in Pakistan or all over the world.
All over the world.
All over the world, really. But she wanted to entrust her voice to a journal which would hear her and sort of talk about her the way she wanted to, and she wanted to also talk about the starting point for her work, which was the scroll that she made 30 years ago, and which started the whole movement of miniature painting, the Pakistani miniature painting, of the new miniature painting, which initiated that actually. So she wanted to talk about that, and she said that whenever anybody speaks to me about interviewing me, they kind of brush that aside as if it's not important. And I said, but you have to be able to say whatever you want. And so then she found somebody with whom she could have a dialogue, which was Sadia Abbas.
And that's really important, because trust only happens when one is putting out consistent work year after year in a publication that has developed a reputation for being intelligent and for sort of treating work the way it should be treated. So Hassan, I know that Alif is there are a lot of really intriguing sections to Alif. So it's not just poetry and fiction, but there's translation work, there is reportage, there's travel writing. Did I just say travel writing?
Yes.
Okay, I repeated it because I love it so much.
There's a novelette this time.
There's a novelette this time, there's a memoir, there's an essay. But how do you guys decide that these are the things that you wanted? Because again, I feel like this is something that does set Alif aside from more sort of let's say more focused.
So the sections vary, the prose sections, they vary from volume to volume, but we've always had fiction realism, and then fiction, some form of magical realism or something. It's probably because we are quite intrigued by it ourselves, and I see that a lot of young writers in Pakistan are veering towards that subgenre of fiction. But then we always have an archive section, so every volume will, we sit down, we see which poet perhaps or which writer hasn't been given the sort of credit in the because people who wrote in the 60s or the 70s.
Or has, but not in
that
a way
extent,
to,
perhaps.
Daud Kamal, for example, I mean, his work is really good. And Makki Qureshi, undervalued,
Oh, I absolutely.
And then who was
and of course, like Adrian Hussain, who's such a prolific writer.
Hamida Riaz, so again, a wonderful poet in Urdu, whose work was translated by Temina Ahmed.
Yes.
And so we also try to put, and this time Munir Niazi, so his work is being translated by somebody called Amitabh Bakchi in India, and he's coming up with a book of it, and we have it on our virtual launch also, his viewpoint about this. So we welcome any genre. I mean, if somebody wants to send us horror, we'll put it under horror. So it's not decided in advance that these are the genres we'll have this year.
But mostly there's always an interview section, there's always some form of essay writing.
If you get a submission,
exactly.
Which,
I mean, so for
which
example,
doesn't fit in the rubric, then we'll make a space for it.
So, I mean, the novelette, for example, in the 5th volume, we didn't want to put it in the fiction section because
it was too
first
long.
we were even debating whether we would even put it in, and then we decided to just create a section for it. And reportage this time, we have 3 anecdotes from the team behind Project Dastan. And that obviously didn't fit anywhere else, and it couldn't be travel writing or anything, right? So, I mean, I think it helps being editors, where you can just, obviously nothing is set in stone, and we can just move things around as they need to.
And also because, sorry, just one little bit, when the editor who's really annoying and sort of wants to put a little bit into, that's me.
It is a talk show.
Well, also because, we just want to touch on all genres. So that is, I think, very important to us. I mean, whether it's, in fact, I was trying to trace down, I met at the Karachi Literature Festival somebody who did slam poetry poetry, Pakistani Australian. I think he's disappeared. I wanted to have a little sort of, yeah, I don't know where he is. So a little thing on slam poetry in the book. So, you know, all genres to anybody who might be watching are welcome.
Absolutely. And I've also noticed, and Ilona, maybe you can weigh in on this, is that it's the Aleph also has a lot of international contributors too. And then I feel like that really provides a diverse kind of confluence of voices alongside Pakistani ones as well.
I think that, you know, like a lot of journals have become international now, whether they're, you know, like whether they're based abroad or they're based in Bangladesh or they have had an international flavor for a long time. And I think that's really important because it's, I guess it's a part of the whole globalism thing maybe. It's very good because it gives you a cross section of different writing from different places, and whether they're established voices or new voices. I think that's really enriching actually.
Absolutely. And I think then that also probably increases readership at a level where if, let's say, a Sri Lankan poet is writing and they're placed alongside a Pakistani poet from Multan, that's amazing. That's a great way, it's a wonderful exchange of ideas happening on the page. We're going to take a very quick break on this wonderful note. Stay with us. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the coffee table. We're having a wonderful conversation about literature and the arts and the wonderful work that the Aleph Review has been doing and promoting it for the past 5 years with members from their editorial board, Mehwish Amin, Hassan Tahir Latif and Ilona Yusuf. And we are missing Afsha Shafi, but we can only have so many people on the show at one time, unfortunately. So I want to ask, and I'm sure this is a question that you all get a lot, is that what is the process, what is the Aleph Review looking for when submissions open? Since Hassan, you do a lot of the email stuff, so you are probably like the first in line when it comes to that, like line of fire.
So every volume begins with us trying to decide a theme. That was never really, up till the second volume, the first was paying homage to
he was the
Tawfiq
theme.
Rafat. The second, somehow the theme just materialized and most of the volume was centered on magical realism and fabulism. However, when we started soliciting and actively asking people to send in their stuffs that we could select from, a lot of the younger ones, they wanted some form of theme, some form of direction. And since then we started coming up with a theme. It's always optional. So that, you know, if anybody's stuck, then it provides them with direction. But otherwise, we are not only looking for, so this time the theme was Tree of Life, and people were open to interpret it the way they wanted to. But when you go through the book, it's not everybody is sent in Tree of Life, right? So the way the editorial process works is we have a deadline till, you know, we receive everything, and after that we divide up the work.
Like this
Ilona and Afshan, they sit together and they go through the poetry. We go through the prose, all of it, whether it's essays, travel, whatever's come in. And then we slowly, over the course of 2-3 months, decide what we like. We compare.
You're being very liberal, not 2-3 months. We have to decide fairly fast.
Well,
because we have to get down to
last year it took 3 months.
But it takes several weeks.
Or more, at least.
Careful consideration.
Yes, let's say
Last year we started earlier, but I think that didn't really help because
so the
then
theme helps to focus people, but you don't have to necessarily stick to the theme. And is it important to have been published before?
No.
So we've had a lot of first-time writers, first-time poets as well. So we don't necessarily look at the bios right at the start. When I share everything with you, you don't even have the bios till the very end. So it's always reading the work, and you know, if you recognize a name, then you recognize a name. But if you don't, based on the merit.
But in again, that I got this piece of work from Ilona knows that.
Yes. I'm going to ask you, Ilona, get ready.
Somebody who's published. But I mean, you know, but that particular work was very weak, and it was too much of a cliche. It was too stereotypical, and Ilona and I discussed it, And, we were a little bit feeling a bit weird at turning down a published author.
Yes.
But we did. Because we felt that work was not doing justice to the journal and to other people's thing. And, the space that could have been occupied by that could have been taken by another person who's maybe not published at all, but has done by better work.
I think that's very important to have that kind of editorial integrity. And of course, I don't mean it in the sense that other people don't have integrity. But that's a tough call that editors do have to make. But it's one that it's a necessary call also, because like you said, you have a vision and you have a you have a very clear idea of the kind of work that one is looking for, and all published, and all of us know that not all works that we make are created equal. Obviously, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's amazing. But,
And every year, I think that makes us a bit nervous, I would say, whenever we solicit from people who've been who have been published, who are a bit more established, because what if they send in something that. So that does happen, but then, we have put our foot down and we've
in this case,
decided
I think it was the person who sent it was unsolicited again, but a published author. And so mostly the people that we solicit also have been very good, that they realize it's a good journal, and they put in that kind of thought and trouble. But having said that,
that's something I'm curious about. Maybe, Ilona, you can tell me something a little bit about this. Is that because the creative sort of group pool of people in Pakistan is not huge, and we talked about this in like the first segment about how the scene is still small. Do you feel like it's potentially awkward when one is editing work to sort of have to tweak things, and particularly with poetry, because as a practitioner, it's something I'm always curious about, is that how much editing goes into fixing poetry and doing it in a way where you are sort of having to keep that balance between your editorial integrity and also not wanting to upset the author of the work. And a lot of times everybody is only 1 or 2 degrees of separation away from each other. So, you could get an irate phone call.
Okay, so the thing is, like, editing is always like, it's always a difficult call, right? Sometimes people are very amenable to it. I mean, like for this particular issue, there were 3 or 4 poems which needed some editing, and we did notify the poets, and they were pretty okay with it. At other times, we've had people who really objected very strongly. Eventually, it did come down to some editing, and honestly, in the editing, I mean, for me, editing is treading a very fine line. You don't want to saturate the poet's voice, right? You want to keep the quality of the poem itself, or the voice of the poet. You want to tighten it so that it reads beautifully and it flows beautifully.
Absolutely.
So, and very often that tweaking can be very slight, but that slight difference can make all the difference. And even one word sometimes can be, can make a huge difference. And at the same time, like sometimes you get somebody who objects to that one word being changed, or like even if you say, okay, we suggest these words, or it's up to you to choose another word, or read it all together. And sometimes, again, that can be a very sensitive issue.
Yes.
And
I feel like a lot of people, at least in Pakistan, we are writing on our own, and a lot of people are self-taught, and we don't have mentors, and we don't have editors that you can send your work to and be like, what do you think of this, before sending it to a publication. So I'm sure for many writers and many poets, the Aleph Reviews editorial team is probably their first sort of interaction with an editor who is sort of able to give them feedback on a piece of writing.
Yeah, that is true. And I think that actually makes a difference. And, oddly enough, like when we started, we weren't sure how much editing we should do. And so I asked a couple of people who had been editing, and they said, you shouldn't really be doing major editing. That's not the job of you. But in some cases, as Mevish knows, there has been structural editing, and even when I was editing with Beena Shah for the Alhambra Literary Review. There were some pieces which came which had great promise but needed some pretty major grammatical changes or even some shifting of paragraphs here and there if it was prose. And with poetry, because it's more of a condensed or compressed genre, then, it's a matter of words or flow or so on. But yeah, I mean, Mehwish and I and Hassan and Afshan, we do have these discussions and we do offer editorial feedback because, again, it's a matter of accepting people who have promise, and there are only so many platforms available. There are very few.
Absolutely. And one thing that I'm curious about, and I'm glad that Ilona brought up the Alhambra Literary Review, for example, which was a wonderful publication. Yeah. And then, we also had the Life's Too Short review. Yeah. So we've had sort of people coming together to put together journals, and it hasn't sort of worked out. And I feel that one of the reasons why might be because, people felt like there wasn't enough good quality content. But here we are.
Okay,
5 years
I would like to say that I feel there is crazy talent in Pakistan. I mean, in the art thing, you don't even have to even think about it because there's so many young artists around. As far as writing is concerned, now our avowed mission is to have a backbone which is of established writers so that it encourages the young ones to also write and feel very happy about being put next to them, right?
And the fact that they've been selected, then it really means something.
And they say it. They said, oh my God, I'm in the same volume as Kamla Shamsi, I can't believe it, or whatever.
It's true. I was published in the second one. I think I was on this page, and on this page was Adrian Hussain, who was a poet that I admire greatly. And I was just like, just this is
Look
enough.
at that.
And then, for the 5 pages down, it was Bapsi Sedwa, and I was just like, what? What's happening?
But you're rising voice well on its way to stardom. But I want to also just put in a little thing about poetry versus prose as far as editing is concerned, and also the fact that, you have to choose something which is, it has to give you a little frisson, when you read writing and there's something good about it. And it gives you that little something at the back of your neck and you say, this guy is good. But sometimes little problems can create a kind of a disjointed thing in the sense with prose particularly. Because like she said, poetry is condensed anyway. So you can think of each word. I mean, a poet will think of each word.
Exactly.
But with prose, sometimes you come across people who repeat needlessly, who will go on with their sentences and don't realize that there's something called a full stop.
That's where that sort of editorial polish comes in.
Yeah, but you do know that this person is good.
Yes.
His voice is good or her voice is good, but you want to you almost
expedite it.
And she's very good, Ilona, with her editing. I am a slash and burner,
You're like Ezra Pound with T.S. Eliot, who cut out all of the wasteland.
I'll tell you why. Because again, I say this again and again because I owe a debt of gratitude to Tawfiq Rafat and Kaleem Umar. And their theory was that, if in the middle of the night you get a calling, it could be from God, it could be from your muse, but it could be just you wanting to write something, spout something. I mean,
but I think it's really
all
important.
spoutings are not written in stone. It's not the 10 Commandments. You can change them. You can change them. You can self-edit. You can let it rest for a while. You can go back to it.
But these are things, and I'm glad that you brought up, because you mentioned the art, about how with art, you don't even, it's like all there. But our art scene is this accomplished because it's the product of decades of the NCA
and other institutions.
Refining artists and churning out polished creatives, that we haven't had a commensurate situation for writers of all kinds.
No academy for writing.
Exactly. No creative writing degrees. We don't have writers who teach here. And everybody needs that kind of polish. So, Hassan, I know that Alif has a website that runs alongside the actual print edition, but the content of the website is not the same as this. So it's like, 2 for the price of 1.
So, yes. We launched the website last year. January 2020 officially. And the idea was, and the way it works now is all four of us, we take a fortnight each, one after the other, and we essentially curate the website. So it's not entirely this or that. So we do have excerpts from the book, because obviously anybody who's written for the book, they also want to be able to broadcast their work digitally. It's also a platform for us to easily showcase the work to people who don't have access to the book yet,
and
for example.
It's that matter of international access
that
also,
as well,
where
exactly.
if you can't
Which
get
we're
the
working
book
on,
physically to bookstores, especially with these days
nowadays,
you can have it on the internet. And so people who haven't been published in the book, can they submit work for the website separately?
So I don't know, I hope in a couple of days we're able to put up our submission guidelines, and they'll go up for the print as well as the digital, the submissions that we're going to ask for. And the idea is that a lot of times people send in work that's very topical, and it doesn't make sense for them to wait for an entire year. Or too long even, and it doesn't make sense for them to wait an entire year for it to come out in book form, and we might have to edit it because of space issues. So that work can go on the website. So it's not that if you're published on the website versus the book that there's a difference in the quality, but it's just the nature of the work. And sometimes work is very visual, so we had a GIF poem even, and that it was obviously you can't have that type of experience in a book.
Quite right.
So that's why the website is there.
So what's new? So what's coming up for Aleph Review now that 5 is out?
Hopefully another 5. And so we're going to continue the website. This year each editor has a theme, and if you go through the website, the curation of that editor, you might be able to figure out the theme. Although I think we've pretty much highlighted that in our editorial notes. And apart from that,
you see, for example, he's doing a very interesting thing, which is archiving, and I'm focusing more on people who enable art to reach our audiences in Pakistan. So Ilona's doing something on music, and
Afsha is
doing something
independent cinema.
Independent cinema.
Fun.
Yeah.
I love how Aleph brings all these strands together at all times. You're looking at cinema, you're looking at music, you're looking at art, and it's like, yes, all the creative.
We had 3 screenplays from young writers in our first issue. So excerpts from them.
Absolutely.
So we want to.
So what's next? Well, this time the first thing that this was the first year we had a virtual launch, because obviously we couldn't have a digital one, an on-location one. So people can head to our Facebook page, or by the time the show comes out, hopefully on our IGTV as well, and watch all the talks over there. Some very interesting short panels.
Very interesting.
As you know
very well, being part of them.
And you're doing well.
And then the next thing is, and that I believe I'll leave up to you to talk about, because we want to place Aleph as widely as possible across Pakistan. So that's the initiative we're going to launch.
My idea this time is to make a list of, we have done that to some extent, of all the libraries in Pakistan. And so we're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. One, we want to make it accessible to libraries. But if we send them on our own, we are undercutting our own. We don't have any profit. We don't have any profit, but we are undercutting.
It's a question of outreach also. And if a library wants it, call them. If you're a librarian,
please
get
call
in
us.
touch with the team.
And the other way that we are going to sort of capitalize on that is, because we have to capitalize a little bit, monetize the product as well.
To sort of keep it going.
Yes, is to ask individuals, sponsors, to say, if we have 5 issues right now, we will send the 5 issues to some library, maybe of their own choosing as well, if they want. 5 libraries, and we we are going to put it on the website very soon.
Oh, great! So one can sort of sponsor a set of
Alice to be in a library, or even in 5 of the
or
5 in one, whatever.
But that's wonderful.
So then, and the sponsorship deals can start from very small to bigger ones if they just want to donate.
Because what we're wanting to do is maximize the amount of people who have access to it. And I imagine with libraries, you're basically looking at students.
Yes.
And wanting to give them an inspiring sort of dose of what all we are capable of.
And I just want that everybody who's watching this, if they have libraries, if they're running schools, if they have libraries, they can take the first step in getting in touch with us, and they can buy 5 copies, right?
We can figure it out.
But the others can sponsor it. Others can sponsor
Others can sponsor it. Thank you so much, Mehwish and Hassan and
Thank you for having us.
joining me today. Again, congratulations on the wonderful 5th. issue of the Aleph Review, which you can get from all good booksellers across the country.
Or directly from us on the website.
Or directly from the Aleph team, from their website. It is a wonderful showcase of the fantastic creative work that Pakistanis have been doing and continue to do over the years. And, you know, to support our own. Thank you guys for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit up the Aleph Review website for a lot of wonderful new and old content. And we will see you next time on the coffee table. Bye now.